everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name's Tim Hunter, and I'm the Head of Learning and Events at BAFTA, and we are sponsoring this session today because, as well as our awards, which everyone knows, we also run a year-round programme of events at various venues across the UK, which are about kind of some of the inspiring individuals from the worlds of film, TV and video games, sharing what they know and the secrets of their success with their peers and with the public. We also webcast a lot of our events, which can be seen online at BAFTA.org. And if you want to keep abreast of all of our events programme, the webcasts and some sort of exclusive competitions which we run, please do sign up for our mailing list, details of which are on this postcard, which you should have on your chairs. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand you over to Peter Dale and Molly Dineen. Enjoy the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, BAFTA. Molly Dineen has made, she says, 17 films over the last 20-odd years. Her subjects range from pop stars to farmers, lords, soldiers, politicians, and underground night workers. A very, very wide variety of casts. But at the heart of her films is a deeply inquisitive and intelligent mind that seeks to put us in a relationship which is both revealing and intimate with the humanity of her subjects. And it's the hallmark, I think, of Molly's work that allows us into some of the real crevices of British life. So that's the subject of this interview. It's not a retrospective of Molly's work particularly. It's about how Molly finds her subjects and how she forges relationships with them and how she maintains those relationships on camera very often to produce the films that she does. Now, Molly and I came across each other, she probably won't remember this, when I was a cub producer on 40 Minutes in the 1980s, I think. And there was a brigade of producers like me who used to sit in offices with typewriters, and we used to book crews that cost £1,000 a day, and we used to go out and make our little films in 15 days, because that's what the budget allowed, and we had to stay in the equivalent of Premier Inns at £54.60 a night. And if we went over that, we were castigated and had to pay the rest ourselves. And we made our films and they went out on the telly. And we sat in our offices in our corridor, and word would come through that someone called Molly was going to come in. And she'd sweep down the corridor, past our little offices, sweep into the editor's office, and Molly would make the film, as the editor of 40 Minutes constantly reminded us, by sleeping on friends' floors and never taking a crew out, shooting it all herself. And why can't you be more like that?
So you really like me?
So it started with quite a resentful relationship, I have to say. But, of course, she produced amazing, amazing films, and there was a lot to learn from that, because in our little offices, we had our little ideas, whereas Molly, I think, probably lived in the real world a great deal more than we did. Anyway, the next time we met was when I was at Channel 4, and Molly came in I have to say, a rather typically Molly way, saying, "I've started shooting this film, do you want it?" But it wasn't quite typical of the way you normally start films. This was with...
No, it was Geri Halliwell, because I'd made a series of films which had meant me living in institutions or with other people, and then that had gone on for some years, but then Geri Halliwell called me and asked me to make a film about her when she'd left the Spice Girls. I'm sure it's an event you all remember. And it was bizarre because she was on CNN every 5 minutes. They were saying, "Where is Ginger Spice?" And it was so extraordinary. But I mean, it was I'm starting with that because it's so atypical. A, for me to make a film about a celebrity, and B, actually a woman, and C, the fact that she asked me, so the dynamic was difficult. Yeah, and I went to Peter and Alan Hayling and said that I'd started shooting this thing. And did they want it? And did you want it? I can't remember.
I think we would have cut our arms off for it. Can we have a look at it?
Oh, no, I'm not before.
No.
I want to just explain, because It's a slightly weird way to come in, but we deliberately didn't want it to be chronological because it's not that sort of session. It is, as Peter said, about casting and relationships. So the reason I've picked 4 little sections of this film because it starts off, I had such a nightmare cutting it, partly because I went into it thinking that it was rather good of me to make a film about Geri Halliwell, and I just had a baby, and I thought this will work because she's very girl-friendly. She was thinking, actually, I was incredibly lucky to be anywhere near her or in her court, and she would let me follow her, and maybe occasionally she would say things to me, and then if she liked it, it would go out and be useful to her. So there was this terrible tension at the beginning, I mean, really bad, and I thought in the end I had to put that in the film. It had to be clear to the audience what they were watching. So the 4 clips really go from how she begins to how I end up gripping her, I hope you'll appreciate, in the field. Because I had to, in the end, win. I couldn't just sell her, but equally I had to be very careful because she was a public figure and she also wanted 50% control. So there would have been no point me doing anything ridiculous with her. Not that I would anyway. I never have stitched anyone up apart from one person who we'll see later. So I just wanted to start with this because she's a known character, so it's quite interesting, I think, to see the span. So that's the first clips. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
What scary baby, posh and sporty really want right now is to find Ginger, who's gone missing from the spice rack.
Today is Thursday the 28th of May. I'm in Paris and yesterday I left the Spice Girls permanently. I thought it'd be really good to basically record life after, right from the beginning, to see what basically happened. So I'm in Paris with my brother, basically trying to hide from the media.
Big writing to you. That's so fun.
There you go.
She looks fantastic.
I was becoming intrigued by the situation. I should have realised there'd be complications, though. Geri got on the phone to her lawyer to tell him that I was taking over her film.
Put on your best smile. Just be natural. I've got complete control on it. It'll be edited if there's anything, bad in it, or, then when it's really serious, they'll leave the room. Okay? Okay.
Sorry, but I was just listening to you then and what you just said to him about this film being totally in your control, and I'm sitting here thinking, no, it's not.
It is, though. It's in my control. If I don't like it...
But I'm not going to spend months following you round for then you on a whim to say, no, I don't like it. You see what I mean? That's what I meant. You either hand over a bit to me or I can't do it.
Yeah. I'm not that egotistical. I think, this is just about me. But then on the other hand, as managing myself, this has, to a degree, of course I don't... What's the point of making a film to destroy my public image? Do you know what I mean? That's stupid. But then I'm sort of being trusting enough on my instinct to say, well, hold on, Geri, you'll just be yourself, and if I'm just myself anyway, I'm not a horrible person, so hopefully, people, I'm daring to bear, I'm daring to do it, I'm daring to go there, trying to go there as best as I can.
Yeah, but what a lot of people will question is why? Is it that you're an egomaniac? Or that you can't live without a camera?
Why does there have to be a bad motive?
Because it's very unusual, I suppose.
What are the good motives behind it then? I think from a creative point of view, I can see this as interesting, even if it was just a narcissistic pop star sitting here.
Too much of something is bad enough. Bad enough. Something.
Dear Charles.
Who was this to and why?
This is to Prince Charles. So, dear Charles, hello. Hope you're fine. Hope you're okay. Hope you're fine, I hope you're okay. What do you think, Molly?
I think you've got to write it as you would write it.
No, I need your help, please.
Why do you need my help? You should
Because I
write
don't think I'm good enough to write
Yes,
it.
you are.
I don't think it's the best circumstance for you to be sitting, writing, trying to concentrate when you're hot and getting hot and bothered.
Please, I need you. You're the right calibre to deal with such matters, so he doesn't look at this and think, what a cobble.
No, I don't think I should get involved.
No, but I want you to. Just film that. Or with one hand, but give me your brain. You don't need your brain the minute while you're filming, do you?
I think that's really probably the end of my career.
I read in a Sunday Times paper in this interview, and it said, it quoted Melanie B, quote, we're stronger than ever since Geri's left. We don't need her anymore. And to be honest, that says it absolutely all. That says absolutely everything. We don't need her anymore. None of it seems real. I don't know what's happened and just... What do you think?
I think it's quite important to confront certain emotions. You know, it's a bit like why there's no need for a funeral when somebody's died. It's a kind of formal way of saying this is gone. And in a way, sometimes I think you spend too much time in denial, saying it doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I suppose because it matters, you know. But then sometimes I question what I'm crying about.
What are the options? What could it be?
You know, sometimes I think people use sad events in their life and they're crying about something completely different.
It's a bit long. I'm so bossy, aren't I? It's just terrible. I tell you why I'm so bossy, though, because there was no other... It's terrible watching it, actually, with me yakking, but I showed that because you can see in each bit she's slightly losing control and I'm getting my grip. But also because I was trying to be subtle in my inference in the film about what it is that was her problem, which was quite interesting. I mean, her dad put her in for glamour modelling, aged 8 or something. And again, you don't want to be over the top about it, but it had to run as a scene through it, that there was this much greater thing. Otherwise, why are we all watching Geri having left the Spice Girls? Really, who cares? But it was trying to find the cosmic underbelly. But because she didn't really like me talking to other people, and I wasn't nearly pushy enough with all the people she went to see because they were either famous or inaccessible, it meant a lot of research work, teamwork to set up, trying to get in there. And it was all a little bit she and me in the sandpit. And therefore, it is a bit too much between she and I, which is a problem if you have one-to-one filming. And I filmed her mother at one point, and she just screams at me. She chased around the house saying, "Don't make my mother bloody famous. I don't want her on camera." So it was she and I. So I really apologise for the gobbiness. But also because I thought the audience needed to understand the relationship, not to be self-indulgent and talk about process, but because it mattered in terms of how you perceived her. Were you being sold somebody, or what was the deal? I thought needed to be in it.
Your style is, for me, it's very characteristically relaxed and very informal. You operate...
I'm very tense inside.
Very intense inside.
No, I'm trying to be casual, yes. I mean, I'm operating always holding... I always have the camera.
Is that because you want the contributors, your subjects, to feel relaxed with you, or is it because it's a certain kind of look and feel that you want to have?
It's a look and a feel, and you often involve them in your chaos and your problems, and that was easier on film. I'd have my hands in a changing bag, you know, because then you are stuck. And all the films, they were all done on film until Geri. It was the first thing on tape, which was a nightmare because I didn't know how to work with the machine half the time. So there's an informality in as much as it's not me versus them. I'm very much with them, and I give quite a lot of me, not enough that I'm not suggesting that anyone's interested in hearing about me, but you want two-way, conversational, not just questions.
Well, you are a very strong presence in your film, even though you're not seen.
Yes, but I hope, I mean, that's why I'm slightly apologising for that, because I hope normally as a springboard to somebody else, not because I want everyone to hear about what I think from behind camera.
You had a formal training, didn't you?
Yes, very formal.
At the NF?
I was went at the London College of Printing doing photography, film and television, and then I worked with a camera crew to get my ACTT ticket, which is now sounds very dinosaur-like, but it was I worked as an apprentice with a crew, and they, you know, you were trained to follow focus around door frames, and we had competitions as to who could change certain plugs, and it was all that kind of thing, and then you went on the good shoots, and then I went to the National Film School, and the National Film School used to teach in such a fantastically purist way. I mean, I think Dick is he's probably here. He's still pretty strong on this, but the man who did teach, Herb de Joy, was fanatical about observational cinema, about Wiseman, Pennebaker, the Maysles brothers, all those great filmmakers.
About not intervening.
Yes, I'd been taught very much in the style of traditional camera crew, and had always watched BBC sort of documentaries, so it was head and shoulders, wide shot, close-up, reverse, cutaways, tripods. And what the film school did was just take the piss out of you. I wrote a shooting script, and he just held it up for the whole class to laugh at and said, you know, how does she know the nuns are going to walk down the corridor? And I'd say, because I'm bloody well going to ask them to, because I'm making a film. And he'd say, that's not how it happens. And basically, that way of shooting, you're always behind them and following them up handheld. You are never in front of people walking towards you on a tripod. I mean, to be crude about it. So,
and it was religious. Almost, wasn't it, that conviction?
Yes, it was, but actually, funnily enough, it was that first exercise in this enclosed monastery that was, I don't know what they thought was going on. They hadn't spoken for years, and suddenly there was this film school crew crashing round with this man saying, for Christ's sake, because he wanted everything handheld. And I was crap at it. I mean, unless you've, now, 25 years on, I'm really rather good at it. And in fact, it's, I'd say that's, when you talk about being relaxed, yes, the whole body, the way you shoot. I'd never look through that television. Because if you're somebody talking to me, are you really going to talk if somebody's looking down at a television screen? No, you're not, because you've got no one to engage with. So the idea is that I always have it up here, and I have the lens absolutely parallel, and I sort of tilt it on and off. I mean, not constantly, but I'm not having a chat and then I pick the camera up, because then I've lost it. You've got to keep people on the boil, I think, whilst it's close enough to shoot. So for me, the great thing about tape is you can just squirt. I mean, it's terrible in the editing room, because then you've got these acres of crap before you have the good moment, whereas on film, you can just use it the minute you turn on.
While you were at the film school?
Yes, I made Home from the Hill, which was the first. Herb de Joy had done this documentary masterclass after I had shot my opening scene, and so he'd obviously taken the piss out of that, but he'd said, you can learn through this film. So Sarah Jeans, who was the sound recordist, and I moved in with, well, actually it was my boyfriend's father. I'd gone to Kenya with him with a camera, because I thought I'll start a film school film here, because I was just terrified of floating. Started shooting because Hilary Hook was suddenly given notice to leave his house. You can see why my edits are a problem. I'm not even talking chronologically, am I? It's a nightmare. So what we're trying to show you here is a film that is the first time I tried this particular style, but with an incredibly charismatic old man who'd come back to live in England from being in the colonies all his life. And actually, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I did know I was supposed to just kind of be there and be lively. And
but what you did know, Molly, was that you really loved Hilary.
I loved him, yes.
Your boyfriend's father.
His terrible. He was so politically, not so much politically incorrect, but just downright racist. I mean, yeah. But he was also old and vulnerable and charming and completely stuck, because he came back from a world to an England that had changed. So we were showing a short clip. This is the second clip from Home from the Hill, which is actually quite late on in the film, which is the hippie technique, absolutely full and up and running, which is when the man has a problem in the kitchen, so normally one would possibly put down the equipment and help somebody, instead of which in full Herb de Joy mode, I'm then still shooting, pissing myself with laughter with the camera all over the place, and the sound recordist is helping him cook. So I just wanted to show that as a sort of first step of it.
Let's have a look. Thank you.
Unusual fruit as well.
Such a variety of cheese, of course, you know, we're spoiled for choice.
Particularly in the fresh food line, I like the meat because they cater for different sorts of people.
It's such good value.
Better value for money. No two ways about it.
Here we are, ravioli. Now, we put in this bloody machine. It opens it in a flare. We'll see. It doesn't work. I mean, oh, you do it, darling. I can't manage this thing.
You know, you've got to learn to open a can. Sarah, go, you can go and help.
Bloody hell. Oh, I hate these fucking modern things.
Turn it on. Switch.
Mic tap.
I don't understand how these things work. What's this bloody bit of machinery? It's a pair of tweezers, is it? I'm not going to bloody well do it. Fuck the thing. I'll go to the pub.
You've got to cook at some point, you know that.
No. I'm not going to manage that game.
How do you think you're going to eat?
I'm going to do very well without eating. I can't manage that at all.
Did he like you?
I hope so. Yes, no, we had a really, I mean, in fact, it set a precedent for the way I work, I think, which is that the closeness remained, we weren't ever that close before, we grew close through the filming, and then remained very close afterwards till he died, probably about 5 years after that. But during which time he had 4 public screenings and went on to Wogan with Brian May from Queen. So he became a bit of a celebrity as a result of it, not because the film was so marvellous, but it was quite raw and informal a way of treating an old colonel. There is, I suppose, a traditional way you treat people like that, which the film didn't. It was extremely childlike and irresponsible. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't full of content, but how do you describe it? It was sort of, sometimes there's a lack of respect to shooting people this way, I think. And I did worry, I liked that combination with somebody of his sort who'd always been in control, and I thought it was quite an important dynamic. On the other hand, it was I was thinking, I'm never ever really showing what he is capable of. He is quite a dignified person. So for a scene, I did actually I gave Sarah the camera, put it on a tripod, and I interviewed him, and he spoke off camera, and we did an interview in which he was given the dignity of questions and answers, you know, rather than just me running around him all the time in supermarkets and buying drink and not being able to.
Did you have to take care that you didn't stitch him up or send him up in any way?
Oh, God, yes.
What were the dilemmas for you?
But I think you always do that. Well, the dilemmas were racism. That there were some very, very interesting interviews with him. But I just don't know. It wasn't a question of even of just protecting him. I wasn't sure what any of us would really achieve by showing them. I mean, he talked about how he had begun to discover that black people were intelligent, and I mean, I don't even know whether I should say what he said, but he said, it's extraordinary to sit there in front of you with a... Actually, no, do you know, I don't think I can. But he was talking about Africans knowing more about the Franco-Prussian wars than him or whatever, but he was obviously, his language was difficult. And I just thought, I can't put this in because people will despise him. But, you know, maybe that was journalistically irresponsible. But I think I've always been journalistically irresponsible. I can think of each film where I have avoided a core of conflict or difficulty in it, because then I will lose my access because the person will stop trusting me because they will know I'm interested in that. It's very true of the army, this. And that you can't then keep a long relationship going.
How do you handle that when you know that someone is giving you things that are deeply intimate, that will just make them ridiculed by other people?
Well, by having your own censorship, by knowing perfectly well what you can or can't get away with. And you know, some people will say certain subjects are fair game, and maybe they are, as people. If they've done really bad things, maybe you can go for them. Maybe if they are famous, you can go for them. But my rule book is you don't. And you don't also because I think the audience respond differently to your material. If there's a feeling of kindness or generosity, or you know you're being encouraged to like somebody, I think it makes you much more responsive to the grey areas of their lives, of character, of things that are much more basic human attributes or situations that we can all understand. So with Hillary, a lot of people are old, a lot of people can't cope, a lot of people certainly don't understand modern technology, etc., etc., etc. So if you keep it in that area, then he becomes accessible to a lot of people. If I'd cranked up the, you know, he's a bloody great nigger talking about Shakespeare, people would have thought, oh my God, and they wouldn't have wanted him. He wouldn't have been palatable. So it's journalistically irresponsible, but I think it's fine. I mean, I'm never pretending to be completely balanced. I'm always saying this is very subjective. This is my film or my take on an institution or an individual.
For someone who takes that approach, you've spent a lot of your time, your career working in television, haven't you? I mean, your films are funded by television.
Yes.
And your particularly subjective take on things isn't a natural for telly, is it, particularly? I mean, you've carved a niche, in a way, for that kind of filmmaking. When you started working in telly, did you...
I don't think I agree. I think telly pretends to do balance by bouncing between adversaries, but very often the agenda is perfectly clear, what the message it is that we're supposed to take away from it. It's only, I'm just saying that I have a particular, I prioritise relationship, I prioritise the more human side of a situation in order to maybe bring certain issues into primetime telly. After all, people don't have to watch it, they have to be entertained as well.
But largely the prerequisite in commissioning in television for a long time has been, what's the story?
Yeah.
And very often with your films, it's difficult to answer that question. It's about the people and what they reveal about themselves, isn't it?
Yes, but funnily enough, the easier it's become for me, I reckon the harder, as you well know, my edits have become, because I used to have to really tie a film up absolutely beforehand in order to get funding, and whatever I then did on the shoot, I would have had to be absolutely clear about where it was going and what it was trying to say. And I think increasingly I am a bit sort of vague and say, hey, you know, what about doing so-and-so? And then I end up in a mess because I haven't got a tight enough agenda. So I'll think loosely, God, that's really interesting, the countryside, that's definitely worth pursuing, but not be clamped down enough.
When you made your film about the underground, did you that was a sort of formal application to television?
That was actually the first, yes, it was. This film was a bit accidental. It was made at the film school and the BBC bought it. And I did one afterwards, in fact, with Hillary's neighbour, who was outrageous, this woman. I didn't bring that, actually, just for my own safety. But she and her live-in lesbian lover, her daughter-in-law, lived in Kenya with hundreds of servants. And it was a good film, that.
I'm sure.
I'm just thinking, why didn't we bring any of it? But The Angel was the first one that I felt that was not, because the BBC wanted more of this. They actually wanted another series of films with Hillary because he was so fabulous, and I felt I couldn't go back to it. And also our relationship was by then spent. on camera, because he then knew, he'd seen the process. I mean, Hillary, when he was being filmed, never watched English telly, never probably. Whereas, therefore, he was an innocent. And so I did another one in that sort of area with people who were cut off from our TV world. But then the first one I pitched to them was about London Underground, who were trying to revamp certain stations. And there was this, I really wanted to do, I had a friend who worked in signals, so I knew a lot of the Underground was still incredibly Dickensian. I mean, it was extraordinary what was going on there. But I didn't know how to start or where to start. And the BBC weren't that keen. They didn't think a London Underground station sounded that sexy a proposition. But I used to go to choir practice, in fact, through the Angel Islington Tube, and there was a lift operator who was completely barking. I mean, he turned the relationship on its head. He'd open the door and say, "Hello, you lot, you're looking crap today." I mean, he was certifiable, but I just thought I was getting desperate because I'd lose my commission and I'd lose access with the Underground, who'd recently had the King's Cross fires, so they were wanting good publicity but not really wanting anything at all. So I just thought, because of him, right, I'll shoot this station. And actually, the characters in that station were so... They were, when I say fantastic, that's really patronising. They weren't. They were depressed, they were undervalued, but, you know, extraordinary people. And classic, I thought, of people stuck in institutions who are capable of so much, who have so much brilliance, actually, but just because of their situation, they are stuck. And I chose an interview from that film with this man because, actually, I didn't know him at all before, and he was a complete bugger to me. When I wanted to meet everyone in the station, he wouldn't let me in his ticket shop, because I hadn't got the right permit. He was so difficult. And then when I finally got in there, he was magnificent. So I just lived in his porter cabin, basically. And he's called Derek. And when we did this interview, I think it was probably one of the first, we met, so I went out and bought him coffee, you know, all the kind of trading stuff. So you're trying to do something to make someone else's life a bit pleasant so they can put up with you. And then this interview is actually from the end of the film. But I showed it because I just think it's such a, I suppose because I'm so proud of him in it, I think it's a fantastic example of what I like to try and achieve with people in a work situation, but where you're private enough that you can get them one-to-one and they're not showing off, but it is all about what's going on between you two, what he thinks he can get away with.
Steve, thank you.
Can you turn the lights fully down?
If there is a God and there is heaven, I'm going to ask him a lot of bloody questions when I go up there, because I want to know what all this is all about. You don't ask to be born, do you? Do you?
No.
Right, nobody asks to be born. They're here from the pure selfishness of their parents. The mother or the father did not decide they want children. So you're propelled into this earth. You don't ask to be born, and once you've been born, you're just waiting to die, basically, aren't you? You're born, you live, you die. You're here, you're not, you are, and you're not, and that's the end of it. And I want to know why.
But there's supposed to be a certain amount of pleasure in the meantime.
Oh, there is. In fact, that's the only answer I could ever give my son when he said to me one day, "Why was I born, Dad? Why am I here?" I said, "Well, if you hadn't been born, son, you wouldn't have known the pleasure of what it is to be alive."
But that makes it sound as if you're very depressed.
I'm not depressed at all. Realistic, I think, is more the term. It's like people often say to me, "Why aren't you ever miserable?" I said, "Well, I think I've come to terms with, if you can come to terms with the sort of life you've got, like lack of education, lack of opportunity because of the war, things like that, and you can still fit into a niche and be prepared to accept that you're not going to go any further. I think that's the difference between being happy and miserable. Because I'm not going to achieve anything in life. So, as you say, I must be depressed, mustn't I?
What would you actually like to have achieved?
I don't really know. Dreams you can have, but that's not the same as wanting to achieve something, is it? First thing, I'd like to have been taller, because being short is a bit of an obstacle. I'd like to have had a better education. and so I was more aware of things, you know, like the better things in life, like good literature, good paintings, and that sort of thing. But having said that, I'll get by all right, I suppose. Mrs. thinks I'm wonderful, and my mother thought I was lovely. I can't be too bad. You think I'm gorgeous, don't you?
I think you're wonderful.
I think you're wonderful. Can I drink me water now, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
There is a sort of common thread through your films of your relationship with men on camera.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that, or should we move on?
Well, we could move on because I've tried that before and I don't really know why, other than there's an obvious dynamic in as much as you're different. Also, they're old men, and they're old white men, and they're often old posh white men, which is even more of a worry, because that became a bit of an issue on the Lords. I don't know why, unless it's just I think it's something to do also with the culture at the film school when I was there. It was very, I mean, I know I got in because they wanted 50% women, so the whole, I worked with an all-male crew, but then I was into film school because they wanted half women, and then that was quite driven. There was a women's steering committee and all that, and there were a lot of women's films about women, and I don't know why, but I began to think, I don't want to be ghettoised. So then I went a bit over the top, and then only ever made films about men, which was another worry about Geri, because I found her very hard to deal with, because my usual techniques weren't working.
And some people have described your technique as flirtatious. Are you conscious of that, or do you think it's not true?
I'm not. You can't be flirtatious if you don't fancy someone, can you? Is it, or can you? I mean, no, I think it's sort of a pseudo-coquettish. I mean, it sounds very cynical now, but I think, because it's another thing I realise about being so old now, I suddenly thought of the last film, I can't do this anymore, I'm only 50, I can't pretend to be, you know, hello, Molly here. And I've got to work out a different persona now. I've got to be more of a grown-up, because I've kept that one going for a long time. So I don't think it's flirtatiousness. I think it's, I'm feeding back. It's more me being, I'm trying to be natural and me.
And trying to find a relationship with the subject so that you can get them to talk to you in a way that they wouldn't talk to anyone else.
Yes, just like you would, you know, if you're at a party, if you're in the bar at the St Paul's Hotel last night, you can either be bothered or you can't, can you? In conversation, you know when you're on a run with somebody, or when the give and take is good and you're both saying things, or when you should shut up because actually they've got more to say. And I think, in fact, it's funny, I think watching a lot of interviews, people give the interviewee too much, so they've got nowhere to go. I think often it's, again, thinking about thinking about a springboard. In fact, thinking about this makes me realise that's why I can't talk in the St Paul's Bar, because I've lost the art of natural conversation, because all I do now is think about, you know, how you're going to get out of somebody what it is that you think they might give. Which is also a result of research, but it's, if you know, I didn't know that he felt that about life, but I knew that was in his character, and that if you hung around for long enough but didn't prod him, he was never going to respond to questions, but he would respond to a state of mind. So you'd have a kind of a chat about how moronic it was that he's sitting looking at a sheet of aluminium for 12 hours a day, which is what he was. And they were about to build this new station and get rid of him. So he was just going to live out his days on his allotment. So you know what the potential is, and then it's a question of the situation and the, you know, like if you've written a script and you want the actors and you're directing them, it's a different sort of discipline, isn't it? But you're thinking, I know I want that. What situation am I going to get it in? What time of his shift is he going to be in a reflective mood? When does he have least customers so I can have a good conversation with him? Because there's other scenes where there's endless customers in rush hour, and he's hilarious with them because he is he's taking the piss out of them.
Pickly dickly.
Yeah, pickly dickly line. These women got so lost. But that was the time of day when towards the end of his shift, when he's thinking, Christ, the end of another day, you know, and so then you swoop.
He's not, I mean, if you bumped into him in the station, you wouldn't think he was a natural television star.
No, and he'd be quite rude to you. So have you got a permit to stand there, Peter?
What? So what? We ought to move on because
Yes.
time's pressing. The next one is the army, and your central character was clearly born for television.
Yes, I wanted to do a film in the army because they were amalgamating all the regiments, and there was I knew enough about the army for some reason. Is this annoying you? Like it's annoying me, this feedback, or does it not really matter? Okay, sorry. So I wanted to do a film in the army, went to the MOD, and as we all do, you sit there and talk absolute bollocks to the PR department and say what it is you're trying to do. I knew I was never going to stitch them up, but I also knew that they were never going to trust me. So I tried to drop as many names as I could of all the different people I'd ever known that had anything to do with the army. And then they wanted to send me to Bosnia because they said the lakes were lovely, which I thought was odd for an amalgamation of the regiments film. But anyway, I went to Northern Ireland, which at the time was an active theatre of war, and I was going round casting. I was trying to find just a situation, a regiment, a company, a person, anything. You know, I wasn't quite sure how to swoop. And again, you've got this problem because they're saying, what do you want to see and who do you want to meet? I don't know. You know, just can we offer things up? But then that's quite a lot of their man-hours. So I was in Omagh Barracks, and it wasn't looking very promising. There was nothing happening. And I was introduced to the company commander of this regiment, and he was fantastic. It was, you knew from the minute you walked in that because he was called Major Crispin Black, and he was 1st Battalion Welsh Guards, and he had his feet up on the table and cords on, and all these little puppy officers sitting round him, and a Dalmatian on his knee. And he was talking about what a fucking waste of time it was in Northern Ireland. And the fact that he was saying that to me, when I'd just come in from the outside, meant that you knew immediately here is somebody who's going to be brave enough to challenge, or strong enough. And he was a very funny character, had a very good turn of phrase. And the film, or films, were supposed to be hung all on him because he was strong, because you've got to have somebody who's part of a situation, but strong enough to be able to carry it, you know, because I'm not going to be giving much, and there's not going to be no direction, and there's going to be none of the sort of filmic, there's not going to be music or cutting, so the character has to be strong.
And what did you say to Crispin about what you wanted to do? Do you remember?
Yes, I told him all about how strongly I felt about the amalgamation of the regiments, so I got him on side to realise I was on side. And I'm taking the piss out of myself, but I meant it genuinely. I mean, I did think it was wrong, and I knew that mattered to people like him. And I went to their Remembrance Sunday March, which in fact is tomorrow again, and I met up with him again in London, and I just said, can I come back to Ireland with you and just start filming? And he said yes. Now, he said yes because he was bored, really, really bored. They were towards the end of a 2-year term of duty. And for 2 weeks, we had 2 blissful weeks where he really, really gave it all to me because he wanted to. He was bored, he was a show-off, he was a fantastic natural actor. And then he completely closed down on me, and so did my access go. And so I'd got all this investment, and I had a 3-part series I was making with a sound recordist whose father had been in Northern Ireland, so he spent the whole time, as a soldier, he spent the whole time on the floor of the car, I promise you, in the pull-on tea-cozy he had, not recording sound, but freaking out. And we got sent to an army base. So the 2 clips are, one is a very strong character who I think is perfect for this sort of film because of the way he talks. All he's doing in the first clip is describing his job, what he does, and what the army is supposed to do. And the second clip is of the officer who I was then sent off to live with in this patrol base with 14 guardsmen, and made a film that's the only film that I've ever made, I think, where I couldn't stand up and say I'm kind to him. I'm not kind to him. I didn't know where to go with it or what to do, because he was really bad at it. He hated it. And this is a tiny clip of him. It's not the full horror of what happens to him, but he was the sort of officer that was trying to make pork à l'orange for his guardsmen, who were all big Welsh boys from the valley. And so you've got a classic stitch-up documentary on your hands, and you think, do I go with it or not? I mean, and then the third film is with the strong character again. But I wanted to show these two in a way. It was just what I think works as a character and what doesn't. I'm not saying everybody has to be fantastically bluff. It's just that the second character just can only be a victim in the hands of an observational crew, I think. So maybe we should just show those and then speak more about them.
Thanks.
So that's, what is it, number 4?
Yeah.
If you were to look down the hill, you can see exactly why nearly 100 men are devoted to the defence of this one police station while it's rebuilt. Imagine if you drove a tractor up here with the RA have a Mark 15 big mortar in a gas jar. You could lob it in there just like a whiz bang. It's 100 kilograms of explosive, and if we're in there when it hits, it's goodnight Vienna. That is why these guys you're seeing here now, they're tired, they're wet, they're probably quite pissed off. They're out here day in, day out, 24 hours a day.
What will happen once it's been rebuilt?
They'll probably attack it. Yeah. But at least once it's rebuilt, the protection inside it will be enough so that providing you're not standing in the open when it comes over the fence, you'd probably be all right, unless you're really unlucky. At the moment, if they drop one in there now, even on the fortified police building, we'd be fucked, basically.
Bruce is going to be thrown in at the deep end, I think would be a reasonable thing to say. Live with his gang in Killyvilly and patrol out of Killyvilly, quite close to the Irish border, and in circumstances of some risk and danger.
You can lead through your rank. In other words, just enforce things through the authority of the system, or you can lead through through your your personality.
That was a bit mean. I was just showing that in terms. You can see though how extreme the difference is in confidence or not. I mean, funnily enough, the second film, which is about this young officer who doesn't make it at all, and his radio breaks, and his guardsmen don't perform for him, and it's all a disaster. But the MOD liked that one the best. That's the one I thought was the buttock cleanser for showing them for clearance, that they would say no. But they thought it was very, very good to show how a young guards officer has to be put through it and how it's a very unpleasant thing to do.
What happens to you in the cutting room? What happens to your relationship with your contributors, your cast? How do you, because clearly you are very, very close to them on shooting.
Well, that's why I do it too, because that's the part of it I really enjoy. The cutting room is disastrous because to make a good film, very often you need to create edge in your cutting, an edge equaling undermining. You know how often you see somebody says one thing and the next person completely undermines or contradicts it, and it does give it a bite, it gives it a permanent edge. It also means you're constantly undermining everything everyone's saying. And I can't have that happen because I have a loyalty to them, which means if I am filming somebody, I will ask for very, very open access, which in return, they see the film at quite a rough stage, which is not to deceive them into thinking it's all going to be okay in the end, but it is to genuinely be able to respond if there's a huge problem. But you sort of know I can get away with that because I know there's not going to be, because I haven't made a film that's attacked. But it's a huge problem for editors because I think it often goes against the grain of the course of an edit. You know, that when you often create that dynamic in cutting, and I'll say, but you can't do that, because actually it's not fair to do that, because that's not what's done. So they'll say, but that's not the point. You know, we're making a film here, we're telling a story, we're making this point, and that is the right thing. And I've had a lot of trouble. Also, as you can hear from my speech, lack of clarity, lack of clear thinking, always going off at tangents, which works on a shoot because you can get the breadth of somebody. So the fact that I'm not completely locked in and committed to my goal and what it is I'm after, that if maybe suddenly they're going to go off and move house for their auntie, I'll go too, because you never know what fat you might be able to put on the bone. But then it makes, in your cutting, is ghastly. Do you then respect all those tangents and go off on them, or do you then shut down and not use them, because then the film becomes completely diverse? I mean, that was a huge problem in Lie of the Land, actually, the last one I did, which Peter was extremely helpful on.
I just want quickly to move to for me, which is a slight blip in your career, when you got involved with New Labour. You did.
I did.
And that was quite a problematic relationship.
Yes, it was.
Why did you...
It was complete prostitution, and it shouldn't have been done. And it shouldn't have been done just because if you make documentaries, I'm not sure you should use that technique to sell a politician. And I can only... I was asked to do a party political broadcast for Tony Blair when he took over the Labour Party from John Smith. But because Richard Eyre, who runs the National Theatre, had been asked to do it by the ad agency, and they had a concept and everything, that Blair was going to be a particular way, and then this bulldog was going to be intercut with him, and he was going to be so dynamic that the dormant bulldog was then going to rise up and rush off into the future, and this was Britain. And that was the concept. Anyway, he said that he thought that I should film Blair because it would be much better to get to the nub of who he is, rather than for him to be directing him. So, and I said yes because I had just had a baby. I'm always using that as an excuse, aren't I? So I thought this will be short and interesting, and it's not a proper documentary, and I'll learn a lot from doing it. And months and months and months later, after having quite bad tussles with Peter Mandelson and Alistair Campbell, because they kept trying to put Tony Blair in orange makeup and dress him up and get him to talk about policy to camera, which just absolutely never worked. And we got to a point where they got a bit desperate too, so they left me on my own with him, which was then another problem because Cherie Blair didn't want his private life to come out unless she was controlling it, and it was to be in the mirror. So I was in the kitchen, where the whole of the broadcast happens in the kitchen, where finally, after months and months of shooting this extraordinary stuff of him turning to camera going, look, because you know how politicians do it, they never answer a question, they just come back with a statement. If you are trying to do anything remotely respectable, it drives you mad because you can't believe it. So we had to keep stopping. I said, why are you talking to me like that? That's not what I asked you. Because it was in his interest at the time. You know, he hadn't been Prime Minister. He was just, nobody knew who he was, and my job was to try and make people just see who he was. But the Labour Party also wanted him to be dynamic and full of idea and focus, and it just wasn't working. We were fluctuating between really silly pieces to camera or much more casual, laid-back stuff in the kitchen, in the car. And in fact, it was very strong, that stuff. He was extremely likeable, for which I feel very sorry, because I think it's a deceitful thing to do, because you don't have to be likeable to be a good Prime Minister, do you? But I was using that technique, and that's what it became a separate party political broadcast, which was 10 minutes of him hanging out. I don't know if anyone saw that. He's in the kitchen and he's in the car saying how he'd wanted to be a footballer. And then the one with the concept and the bulldog had to go somewhere else.
Now, Molly was quite resistant to showing you some of this, but I think you very graciously agreed to let us see a little bit of her and Tone.
Can I explain how it happened, though? Because after we'd had this thrash in the kitchen, after the months of disappointment, of it never working out. And I was supposed to cut it too, you know, and then produce this thing for it to be covered in roses, red roses. And Sarah and I then had spent this long session with him in the kitchen, and basically it had worked, and he was really, really good. She had smashed all his china with her boom pole, so we were sort of in a very friendly mode, and he took the camera off me and started filming me and Sarah. Now, the reason I showed it to Peter because I think it's really, there's a lot about it, actually listen to what he says in it. But it's quite interesting. The reason I'm embarrassed is A, it's a bit egocentric, and B, I'm such a tosser in it. So in terms of talking to camera, you just see it's horrible how pleased with myself I seem to be. But it's all this sort of game going on.
It's about a game that you're trying to build with
him. But it's about a game, because what I'm trying to do to him is say, listen, you bastard, this is why I want you to be like this, because you just come across as an idiot when you talk in the other way. So it's all part of what you would call the flirtation, but trying to break down the formality of how he thought he had to talk to camera. And that's why I just thought it was quite funny to look at it, partly because of how we know he speaks and partly because of Tosser here explaining to him how to shoot. I'm now going to be crippled with embarrassment. So it's on VHS. It'll be really bad quality.
Oh, really?
No, ask Sarah.
Why, Sarah? Why did you come into this?
I'm lost.
Because of the men she meets.
Is it because of the men you meet?
Yeah. Don't have to things like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's embarrassing.
It's probably very disappointing that you didn't go through.
I'm supposed to be married.
Reversal.
Hello, Ross.
This is a home movie.
I don't think we'll ask you what it's like working for us. I think we might get an honest answer on tape. We wouldn't want that.
But you see how difficult... Now I can see how difficult it is to talk to you. So if you open that eye... Right.
Ask her about saving her
So what
life.
I... See, when you're talking there, you go into I'm speaking to the nation. But when you talk to me, you get much more human. I mean, it's not if you close your eye like that.
Hang on, Tony. You can do a shot in the mirror now, which is a self-referential one.
All right.
He's quite like Nick Broomfield, doesn't he?
Go on.
He's got much more hair than Nick Broomfield. You look lovely
Just
as a
as well.
crew.
Go on, Molly. Why do you do this filmmaking?
It's a social climb, so I can meet important people.
No, that's not true, Molly. Come on, tell me the real reason.
Because I'm nosy.
No, I don't
Because I'm
believe that.
boring. Because I'm middle class.
No.
And my whole life is a quest for anecdotes.
No, I don't believe any of that either. Come on, honest answer, please, Molly.
Because I'm good at
Concentrate.
it. And I've gone on a run for so many years now. I've been told I'm a goddess till I hit the Labour Party. And I've ended up filming Alistair Campbell interviewing Tony Blair, and it's done my head in, which is why I had a drink at 5:30, actually.
Yeah, but why are you good at it?
Because I work with Sarah.
No.
Because I care about people. Because of my religious background.
I'll tell you why I think it is.
Why?
I think you're
you
good
can't
at
tell
it.
us because you don't have any confidence in us.
No, I do have confidence in you. I think you're good at it. Because... I think because you're very intelligent and analytical. And you're interested in people's relations with one another.
Yes. But does that make me wrong to do a party political broadcast?
No, it doesn't make you wrong at all.
But it is if I work with people who are scared of truth because they think that truth is going to drop them in it, rather than my belief that truth will out, and truth is what you should celebrate about things.
Yeah, that's true, but on the other hand, you can't expect politicians to be perfect, you know.
No, but this is
When
the
they've got
difference, okay?
elections to
This is
win.
you doing a political interview. Right, you say, look, I think the reason the NHS is a problem, this with the hands, which is very good, okay, there's a lot of that.
It looks as if you're reaching right into the lens at me. I wonder if that would be attractive
So
to the
you
public.
talk to me like that, you say many, not the few,
Future, not the past.
future, not the past, and leadership,
Not drift.
not drift, okay? That's you talking bollocks, right? You talking fabulously is you saying, like this, your whole body changes and you say, my dad was a Tory, basically. He didn't care what kind of politician I was. He just wanted me to be in politics. But because of him, I understand why it is that people don't want Labour, or why they didn't ever trust Labour. They thought conservatism was the path of. And
Yeah,
that's what
I
makes you
get
wonderful,
that,
you see.
yeah.
And then it's suddenly satisfying, because you think real person, doing real thing, talking,
Yeah.
as opposed to...
And that gives you a buzz, does it?
No, it makes me think I'm doing the job well. Whereas when I
Yeah.
film political interviews, I feel I literally want to just lock the camera off and go and have a cigarette somewhere, because you
Yeah.
could do it for anyone.
Jolly good. Oh, there you are. I think that's probably the most interesting part of the PPP, really. What do you do with it now?
Oh, I just wanted
God,
you
it
to
is
know
heavy.
just how much
It is
we
very,
care.
very heavy.
The cockiness, I'm really sorry. I remember also what was going on there, which is that they weren't trusting us, to the point that Alistair had taken over and he said, I'm going to interview Blair. So he interviewed Blair. I found it so humiliating. I thought, but I've made really good films and I'm filming his interview. And it was awful. It was like being... that was probably the result of that also, that Alistair had got just desperate about why there was no content. And I kept saying there's no content because he doesn't know what to talk about. So it wasn't...
It's really interesting that the constraints on the political class to try and manoeuvre you into a particular way of making a film.
Yes, except they weren't really, because they didn't know what I did. That was, again, my cockiness. Talk about living in a bubble. I'd thought that they knew what I did and therefore I would have proper access. But in fact, they asked me to do it and then gave me no access at all. and they were permanently there, or making him up, or putting him in a position. He was watched and listened to, and you couldn't begin to do it. So had they known why Richard Eyre suggested me, we would have been given much more free rein from the beginning. But it got to this silly point because I just got desperate, because I thought I can't do it, and I couldn't get myself into a position of him. He had to trust me to tell Alistair to back off for me to then be able to do it.
Can I just say that I think this is quite a departure for you in a way, because you came in to talk about it as a subject rather than as a set of characters. And you said, I'm really passionate about this particular subject, I want to explore it, and I'm now going to go out and try and find people to be in it. And it ended up being quite a different film from the film you normally make.
Yeah, because I'd been interested in the hunting thing, I mean, for quite a long time, but it was very, very hard to, I mean, not because I'm interested in hunting, but because of what hunting stood for. It means it gave me a chance to make the same old film again about institutional collapse or the end of a way of life in Britain. And it was impossible. I'd started quite a few times, and every single time the film looked and sounded ludicrously stereotypical, and you knew that nobody would ever go with it or be interested. So I went as far away as I could, which was to the Lizard in Cornwall, and also to an amateur hunt. There's a hunt handbook where you can, you have to begin somewhere, and there are 362 hunts or something. But the first man I met, the man who I would have made a film about him, he and his brother lived with their mother and had lived in Cornwall and never left Cornwall, really, and he was in his 60s, and he was an extraordinary, timeless character. And if you wanted to make a film about the countryside or what's actually happening and the kind of decay and collapse there, I would have normally made a portrait of him and his life in his household, and you would have had the politics would have been the underbelly, the issues would have been there, but not up front. But then I went out with him in his flesh truck to do what he did, which is he picked up stuff from the farms in order to feed to the hounds. And I was so shocked by what he did that it did change the course of the film, because it was one of those that hadn't happened before, actually, on a film, where I thought I will abandon the grey area I was talking about earlier, where it's the human condition, it's what we can all relate to. Because I thought it was such a disgrace what was going on, which was the killing of healthy animals that don't get fed into our food chain because we import, etc., etc. And so the nightmare of it, though, was that I loved him as a character, but I thought it's not in his character to deliver the information as to why this is happening. So I went to another character, because he spoke with such gravitas and such anger and bitterness, but also he was very informed as to why this is happening. But he was the sort of character, if you were to travel the length and breadth of England to find somebody who was not suitable for an observational film, it would be him. Not because he has a problem, but he's a very, very quiet, withdrawn man. His wife didn't speak to me at all, I think, for the entire time. She still had, she's occasionally smiled, but they're very, very, very insular, and I think quite depressed as a family. And it was excruciating, because we would bounce up, trying to do the usual thing, and you could see he was just thinking, why don't you fuck off? But he wanted to speak because he was so angry about the situation they're in. But it became, you can imagine how mucky this is in your rushes, that you've got these different threads, all of them incomplete, but different characters telling, if you like, shedding a different light on the same colour. And then there was another character who was closer to home and who was actually a farmer who never stopped talking. He was incredible. He was a natural TV presenter, but he wasn't in a situation that people would respond to in the same way. There was nothing as violent or there was something about what was going on. I mean, basically, I was being greedy. I wanted bits from each of these situations. And normally I'm much more disciplined about one situation or one character, because otherwise you can't be observational, because you're having to constantly use lots of voiceover to tell people where they are.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about it for me is that you came at it with quite a lot of indignation and anger about an issue.
Yes.
And it wasn't about, I want to try and unpick this institution or this character. It was about, it was almost journalistic in its initiation, wasn't it? It was about what's going on in the countryside, from hunting to what's going on in the countryside to food.
Yes.
And that sort of thing. And then you had to find
Yes.
your characters to work that, to make that issue come alive.
Yes, that's what I was saying. So it was weird casting, because you weren't casting for who will work in a film of this sort, but you're thinking, who on earth is going to be able to explain? Because I really want people to get this and why this is happening.
Should we have a look?
Yeah, these are the three. So there's a little bit of each of these characters from this recent film called The Lie of the Land. And they are doing unpleasant things to animals, yes, so I should warn you of that.
Yeah. Please look away now. Thanks.
What was wrong with that one?
Nothing. There's no value for him because he's a Guernsey cross. Like, there's no trade in them at the moment. It's one of the sad things for the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
But I said they are little crossbred calves. Poor little things.
So explain to me, Paul, what are they?
These are calves that are crossbred Frisians, crossed with Jerseys and Ayrshire in it. Totally valueless.
Why are they valueless?
Well, the modern system. They're not. They're never going to make a decent beef animal. So if the end product isn't going to be top notch, it just would not be worth rearing. New system.
You have to crossbreed to survive in the dairy business. A Jersey gives you more butter fat, which is good for ice cream and cheese. And an Ayrshire improves the udders, making it easier to attach a cow to a milking machine.
I don't like it. It's what they've been driven to.
What, dairy farmers?
Well, they've all got to find their niche, how they can continue farming. Either they've got to go either a lot bigger into like a factory farming state with 1,000 cows, which is going to happen on a lot of farms. And the small farmer can only go one way.
Is that animal dead or is that reflex?
It's dead.
These calves might once have become bully beef, but we don't eat that anymore. Or they might have become veal, but we found that cruel, so it's largely raised overseas. And they'd never produce a decent steak, so they go.
Morally, as a country person, we weren't brought up to do this. We were not, you know, I mean, you all like animals, and you were not brought up to shoot healthy animals. It's pure economics that is, you know, driven them to this now.
Hold it! Hold! Hop! Hop! Hold on it! Come on it! Hop! 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 Hold on it! Come on! Hop! Come on! There we go! Come on it! Come on! Hop! Hop! right, up! Can't get out there, girls. The gate's over there.
That's quite impressive, Glenn. Are you surprised
What?
that they're coming like that?
Why shouldn't they? They're my little dears.
Yeah, but you're normally chasing them and beating them
Yeah,
with
but
sticks.
they'll still come. They know I'm not chasing them today. They shouldn't be able to get through there. Yeah, they'll have to go back up now to that gate. If they really love me, they'll go back up and out of there. Come on, old gal! Up! Up! Come on, then! They're coming. Oh, what a lovely sight. Come on! Up! Oh, they missed me! Come on! Oh! Come on! Hold it! Come on! Up! Up! Hold it! Come on, then! Up! Well, gal.
It wasn't easy to cut.
No. That film, there was a cut of that film. Should we tell the truth? It was really terrible. But you accepted it, didn't you? Well, it wasn't terrible. That's no.
I just said it's going to work.
But it was. I really, really couldn't make it work because of this business of the three characters and not really knowing. I felt so strongly about the issue. Because I hadn't known that issue. I'd gone in to do one thing, to say, let's not mess about discussing bloody fox hunting, you know, 700 hours on that and 6 on the Iraq War, etc., etc. But then having realised about this extraordinary thing going on in food production, so I ended up with this mess with all these different characters, and I didn't know, and the editor didn't know, really how to put it together. And we got to a point, and Peter was fantastically helpful and supportive and tolerant. And we got a cut, and the cut was very aggressive and shocking at the beginning. And it began with struggling and shooting in order to, I think it was to make the audience watch it somehow, to hook them in. You know, and in fact what it did was make you think, oh my God, and you didn't care about anybody. That was the key thing, you didn't care. It was a perfectly okay film as a bit of current affairs, wasn't it?
There's a lot of commentary.
Lot of commentary, lot of facts, and fundamentally you didn't really give a shit. So you either cared about the subject or you didn't. So the way it changed was, it was Catherine Bailey, in fact, who'd been working with me, and she was just magnificent, because I did officially shelve it. I just thought, I can't make it work. It was too desperate and too depressing, and I'd gone in too many circles with it. And she quite rightly said, you've got to just inject all the character back in. And we went back to the rushes, and it was true all the way through. There were, the first clip there actually wasn't, I was thinking it's not very good for character, but that man is extremely characterful, and he's quite funny, and he's quite, you know, and he's very watchable, and he's very funny about his car window at the beginning. So the whole structure of it changed, in fact, to go back to much more of my early films, where it is character-led, so that you're saying at the beginning, do you like this character or not? Is he watchable? So you're presenting a character, and the issue then emerges out of it. And then it became quite aggressively issue-led.
We ought to, I think we've started late. We're going to run over. Should we take some questions?
Yeah, with some lights up so
With
we
some
can
lights
see
and
them.
some microphones, please. Can someone tell me how long we've got before we really get into trouble? 10 minutes. Right, okay, first question, please. Thank you. Lady in the middle. Another one? Another one? No.
Hi, Molly. I just wondered, do you spend much time with your contributors before you film, or do you let it all unfold on camera?
The latter. I spend a lot of time usually in the situation or in that area. Like I spent 6 months on the Underground before I actually started filming at that station, but I'd never met the characters before I filmed them. I'd seen the lift man. I don't think you should ever spend much time, I never do, beforehand, because then you've burnt your relationship out. You know, you've got nowhere to go with them. So yes, the relationship develops on camera and usually peaks on camera, and then it completely changes afterwards.
You said that you'd sort of exhausted Hilary, or Hilary has exhausted you. I mean, do you find that those relationships do wane after a while?
No, it was the Colonel Black in the army. He just suddenly didn't want any more of it. He'd had enough. Yes, I think it is. Yes, because you're going from a standing start, you don't know each other. You then have this very intense journey, which you're pushing, obviously, for a reason, because you're making a film, and they are responding because they don't mind being in the film. And I think together you get to a sort of peak. And I've always found it's 2 weeks. And then, after that, it's really, really difficult.
2 weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah. I mean, other things go on. But with Crispin, it was absolutely 2 weeks. We got back to barracks from his thing, and it was really, really tricky. I mean, we carried on because I had to, but it was very, very different and much harder push. But the ease, the really fabulous stuff, is when he really wants me there because he's bored. So there's a reason for him to have me there. But Hilary was lonely and I cooked for him, so he had a reason to want me there. There's always a reason. Geri was lonely. She wanted a friend. And she says so in the film later. So I think it's when people suddenly think, right, I had enough of that, it's all too intense, because obviously I'm making it intense because I'm always there in that annoying way, but then you can't tolerate that forever.
Do you withdraw if you get a sense that a character's had enough to let them breathe again and then come back later?
Well, either withdraw or do that good cop, bad cop thing with the sound recordist, which is that I can't withdraw if I haven't got what I know I need to get. If I know there are elements to somebody or there's something I really, really want, I'm going to have to manipulate the situation to make them want me. So either I go away for a bit or come back or suggest or, offer something up. Would you like me to help you move house? Trade a bit. Or in one situation, Sarah, who was fabulous to work with, she would just sort of take over the social side of it. And I would disappear for a bit. Because also I think Crispin got annoyed. He said, look, the whole bloody regiment's not going to run on your schedule, which was really unfair, because actually we were being booted about by his sergeants, and in fact being told off for not being dressed properly, which is really funny. But you have to play, I think in an institution it's different than one-to-one domestically, obviously.
Yeah, because 14 days is slightly at odds with the amount of time it took you to make the House of Lords film.
But that's because I spent probably about 14 days outside one office waiting for him to condescend to open it. The House of Lords was made in a corridor because I had no access. Really.
You had 2 children while you were making that film?
Yes, and they thought it was the same pregnancy. So, in fact, I'm using the children as so much of an excuse. It'd be awful when I tell you I've only got one, won't it? No. That was very tricky, the House of Lords, because it was tricky to ever get into a situation where I could do my thing. You know what it is you can do at best with somebody who you've really chosen, but you can't if you haven't got the setting. I mean, it's honestly like the candlelit dinner and the proposal. It's not going to happen in the wrong situation. And so the nightmare was ever getting somebody on their own or in a situation where they would be free to talk, or not with Michael Cockrell's radio mic already on them. That's my big problem.
Another question. There's a lady in the front here. Just wait for the microphone. Anyone else? One up there. The last one, I think.
Yeah, I'd just love to know what's one of your favourite memories of working with Sarah.
I think probably it was the army, because she and I lived in the barracks for on and off for a year. And she was fabulous. Really, really great. I mean, there are many, actually. Yes. Why? Do you know Sarah?
She's my ex-tutor.
Oh, really? No, she is absolutely fantastic to work with. And I really wanted her to carry on, but she didn't. I think she wanted to do her own stuff. But she was brilliant because people liked her so much. And that's quite key, because if you've got 2 people hanging around with equipment, I know what I'm doing. But as far as they're concerned, there are 2 people they don't know who are permanently with them, trying to get in the car or be talking their way into the private bits of their lives, and with the kit. And she was so incredibly nice and so amazingly technically proficient. I mean, she recorded sound. It's quite a big thing in Nagra, and having the boom pole and the radio mics, and we were in, for example, with the army. I remember once I forgot a battery, and she just ran back through the border patrol points, back to the barracks. I mean, the guardsmen were amazed. They weren't as fit as that. And she just went. And I'm just saying she was really, really, really amazing to work with. Socially, technically. The only thing is sometimes it was a problem because people did like her a lot and wanted to look at her, and that would screw up my connection. So I'd have to say,
Bit of
could you turn your
competition,
back? Try and keep it natural, but turn your back, because otherwise you've got the person's eyes flickering awkwardly between you. So for the audience, they're looking at somebody and back to camera and back to camera. It doesn't work. So that was pretty difficult, because then she'd have to kind of look away or suddenly be really unpleasant so that they stopped talking to her.
I love the idea of a third person at the candlelit dinner, distracting them from your gaze. Last question from the lady up there. Thank you.
Hello, Molly. This is really more a generic question and an overview. I work as a lecturer and on a degree course, and I just want to know, what do you think, where the bias sits in the commissioning process for documentary made for TV today?
The bias? Well,
You sure not from the Daily Mail?
Unrealistic sort of pressure on filmmakers today to make things that they really don't want to make?
yes, but I don't understand whether, you know, whether it's broadcasters or it's filmmakers. I suspect it's broadcasters trying to please other people, which is this constant quest for sensation or taking people apart. Or I'm a bit bored of lots and lots of wobbly cameras of people showing off, but no basic content. And it's very, very cheap and easy to get out there with a DV and film some people who want to be filmed fucking about, basically, but with no particular thesis to it, no discipline, no view as to where you're going. And I think that is really, really sad. And I know from a lot of young filmmakers that they feel very pressured to introduce much more sensation to their film or to the subject, or even in the treatment, you know, all the drama that they're describing. And actually, it's not what well, you should know what viewers want, Peter, not me. But I mean, amongst people I know, I think viewers are really intelligent. And you should play up to that and not constantly be debasing everything so that we're basically watching a bunch of half-hearted show-offs who want to be celebrities. I mean, I feel very strongly about it because I think it's crap, and I think it's really muddying the water for documentary. And one of the things that's very difficult is actually this sort of film is extremely expensive and takes a long time. It requires massive support on the part of a broadcaster. So, you know, I am very, very lucky because Peter has, and prior to him, it was Eddie Mertzoff or Alan Haling, have really been tolerant. Now, maybe they're tolerant because you know I'm going to deliver at some point, or maybe it's also because you believe in it. But I think that the mistake is, and what's really unfair, if people are taught, and they're taught at a 2-week schedule, you can make a film like that, well, you can't. You know, I'm around for months with people because I'm having to fit around their moods. That's why the access is good. That's why the relationships develop. Because I don't bully them. I'm not saying, right, I'll be turning up tomorrow with the crew. The crew I work with, we'd just turn up at 9, stick up our red heads and burn holes in their walls. And then you'd sit them on a sofa and they'd deliver this terrified piece to camera. There was no respect for their lives. But the problem with putting yourself in that position and saying, I'm going to try and get out of this what you also want to give, is it's bloody expensive. And I think that's the really tricky thing. If they take money out of documentaries, but they're still expecting the same quality, and you can't do it. And I think that's very important in teaching people, because they will feel, I am failing, I can't get this relationship, why not? Well, because have you had long enough to become so au fait with your equipment that it's second nature to you? Have you had long enough for the person to know what it is you want to ask them about? Have you then got the time to relax and go with their mood, or are you panicking because actually you've got to be finished by 1? I'm not suggesting total indulgence. I just think that it's a shame that there doesn't seem to be as much understanding of the, as it were, artistry in documentary making, that it is actually quite a specific craft that you are doing in whatever particular style. How Anaraki an answer is that?
Okay. I'm afraid we haven't got time for any more. Thank you to BAFTA, but thank you particularly to Molly for such a candid and revealing interview. Thank you.
Thank you.